Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the RPH Ally Peer Support Show. My name is Eric. I am the Director of Peer Support here at RPH Ally. And today I am running the show by myself. It's my first time. Sean is on a 24-hour vacation, so he put me in control. So hopefully we don't have too many glitches here. I'm very excited about today's show. We have somebody very special on with us today. Her name is Joy Wright, PharmD. She's currently an ambulatory care pharmacist at a large teaching hospital, and she deals with a lot of patients who are experiencing substance use disorder in one form or the other. She recently went to a Florida substance use disorder event, a virtual event, and I wanted to bring her on to tell us more about what she learned. So I'm going to play our reel, and then we'll dive right into that. All right, pretty cool. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to do that right, but we got it. Joy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So tell us, why were you interested in attending that event on substance use disorders? Why did you go? And then what are some of the highlights? As you know, I'll be going to Salt Lake City, Utah next week for the APHA Institute on Substance Use Disorders. It's my first time going to that event. So I'm interested in what I'm going to be learning possibly.
So yeah, we had a wonderful event. It was put on by the Florida Pharmacy Association here in Florida. And it was 12 hours of continuing education for pharmacists and technicians. And it was for anyone. You didn't have to be from the state of Florida. So we had people from all over the country, but our speakers were also from all over the country. So it was really cool. So why did I go? My practice, I'm in a frequent visitor clinic, so I see patients who go to the ED or get admitted to the hospital frequently. And so a lot of my patients do have not only alcohol use disorder and nicotine use disorder, but as well, we hear a lot of marijuana and then a little bit more of some of the other illicit substances. And so I wanted something that would be helpful to my patients, but I also personally am interested in the topic as well and wanted to hear some of these great speakers because they were coming from all over. And
who were the speakers? Were they like experts in the field of addiction? Were they pharmacists? Were they physicians?
Yes, we had mostly pharmacists from all over the country. And in fact, I think some of them actually have been speakers or may even be coming up speakers at the APHA substance use disorder events as well. But the kickoff keynote speaker was Anita Jacobson, and I believe she was from Rhode Island. And so she talked a lot about language mattering and how to speak, what communication skills we need to develop as pharmacists, how to improve our motivational interviewing, harm reduction, reducing stigma. So how can we, in no matter what our practice setting in, whether it's community, whether it's hospital, just being in the community, how can we reduce the harm for these people? If they're going to use, let's get it as safe as possible.
You mentioned some important things. As you know, when we're talking about substance use disorders, there's really not one solution for it. It's reducing the stigma. It's communicating better with our patients. Having that patient-provider communication better. It has to do with understanding our patients better. And out of everything you've learned there, what were some takeaways that you had that you plan on implementing into your practice?
So we just found out at this conference that Florida's law is going to be changing. Up until recently, fentanyl test strips have been considered drug paraphernalia in the state of Florida. And so wherever you are, check your state laws to see what is going on. But we just passed in our House and our Senate, and we're waiting for Governor DeSantis to sign the bill that fentanyl test strips will no longer be drug paraphernalia. And so I think that's going to be really important to have in our clinic that we can give to people no matter what you're using, because we're seeing fentanyl pop up not only in illicit opioids, but also in amphetamines, benzodiazepines, anything kind of on the street can potentially have fentanyl in it. And then, so that was a really exciting takeaway that a couple of different speakers touched on this weekend, was that change in the law. I think just reminding myself that words matter. that we don't want to label people with specific titles necessarily, but that they're a person with substance use disorder, that they are in treatment or recovery, and that they're not clean. And we don't have dirty urine drug screens. We have positive urine drug screens, and they're either appropriately or inappropriately positive or negative. So just remembering that when you're writing your notes, when you're talking to people, just a reminder of those good practices was a huge takeaway. And then
it's interesting. I was going to stop you right there and let you take a little break. I heard somebody years ago, and they were saying, yeah, how come when somebody's treated for a substance use disorder, that kind of sticks with them for life, and we treat them differently? When in reality, a patient who's experiencing a substance use disorder should be treated just like a patient who's treated for a fractured arm. It's like they have a fractured arm. They're not like the fractured arm person for the rest of their life. It's like they have a medical condition. They're getting treatment for it. Hopefully if everything goes well and as planned, treatment goes well, and then the issue is resolved, and then they go back to whoever they are, and they're no longer labeled as an addict, with substance use disorder, and they're not treated that way. Just like we don't treat somebody who broke their arm years ago, last year, last month, any different than we would before they had the broken arm or after their arm heals. And so I think it's really important to kind of take that same mindset and try to think about patients with substance use disorder just like they're being treated for any other medical condition.
Right. I think the only difference that I see in my mind is that sometimes it can be very hard for these patients to get off the treatment. And so sometimes it is a lifelong treatment. So then you're thinking of it more as a hypertension or a diabetes, but still it's a condition. It's not, it's not a morality flaw. It's not sometimes people do make poor decisions, but that's not what happens. It is a disease.
I think your analogy to some of those other disease states were better than my fractured arm. So I'm going to start using those going forward. I appreciate you mentioning them.
Excuse me. And then another great speaker we had was Jake Nichols, and he kicked off Sunday. And he has a personal story that's very interesting related to substance use. And he talked a lot about shame and guilt. And I don't think I've ever spent that much time thinking about the difference between shame and guilt, and why one person could do very well in recovery and another person really struggles for the rest of their life with their substance use disorder. And so that was a very fascinating discussion as well.
Yeah, Jake is awesome. We've actually had Jake on our show on more than one occasion, 2 or 3 times, I think, in the last 6 months to a year. Jake is phenomenal. And when it comes to the shame and guilt, understanding the differences between those two things, one, guilt being, I did something bad, I'm guilty for it, where shame is, I'm a bad person for what I did. And then, some people deal with that shame and guilt a lot better than other people. Some people carry that shame and guilt with them for long periods of times, which isn't healthy. Other people are able to get over it really, really fast and kind of get that behind them and, maybe further their recovery journey a little bit faster because they've already got those issues resolved. As long as they still learn from their past and don't keep making the same choices going forward, there's really no point of carrying that shame and guilt along with you.
Right. And another one of our speakers was Thomas Franco. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him from Pennsylvania, but he was talking a lot about the different legislative things that are there to help us. And so he was talking nationally about things like the CARES Act and some of the other national things that have come out to try and help with substance use disorder. And so his talk was truly fascinating, and he did more of a historical perspective of where have we been and how did we get to where we are now, and is there any hope in the future of changing some of these laws? What sorts of things as pharmacists can we advocate for to make things easier for substance use treatment? Removing the DEA waiver for buprenorphine is a small start, but there's a whole lot more that we can do even legislatively to make it easier to get people into treatment.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things have changed in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, even 20 years from now, because I feel like right now we're kind of in the middle of this transition from treating patients with substance use disorders, treating them differently and treating kind of that whole field differently than we have in the past. I think it all started, at least from what I could tell, around the COVID kind of pandemic. They saw a lot of changes, increase in substance use disorder, and they saw that, yeah, some things aren't working. So they're making all these changes now. So I'm really excited to see what effect those changes are going to have further down the road when we look back on this. And, we've come a long way in the recent, few years. We still have a long way to go. And it's good to see that. I feel that this is building momentum and we're definitely going in the right direction. I just hope we keep that momentum up and keep making progress in this area, because it's really, really important. So many people's lives are affected by substance use disorder, and we really do have to find better ways of making them get better, helping them get better.
Mm-hmm. Yes, most definitely. But yeah, the speakers were all incredible at this summit. And I know that when I've spoken with Helen Sereni, who's our new CEO, EVP of FPA, she's talking about this to being an annual event. So it'll be interesting to see how we can pull this together again next year with such great speakers. And so hopefully other people can join us.
Right. And it was 100% virtual event, the yes. Florida one that you just went to, right?
Yes.
Do you have any idea of how many people attended that?
I believe she said there was about 95 that were just under the 100 mark that were registered to attend.
Yeah. And was it the first year that they did this?
Yes.
It was.
Yes, it was the first time.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people didn't even know about it. And so that's another reason I wanted to, have this conversation with you and, allow the audience to hear about it, because they probably didn't even know this existed. And what I'm curious to know too is how many more events like this concerning substance use disorder and the treatment of are out there, So if you're interested in attending these, just know that Florida had a virtual summit on substance use disorders, and there's probably a lot more going on. We just need to reach out or search for them. Do you know of any, Joy, other events like that are coming up by chance?
Not specific to substance use only, but we do have a couple of speakers on substance use disorder at our FPA annual conference in July as well. I know Jerry Moe, who's a very popular speaker from the Betty Ford, is going to be our keynote speaker.
Okay, fantastic. And tell me again, what event was that?
That's the Florida Pharmacy Association annual meeting. It's going to be, it's unfortunately in person. So you have to get here to Florida. We're having it at Marco Island. I believe it's July 5th to the 9th is that conference. But we do a variety of in-person and virtual conferences every year. I think that last count, we do about 8 or 9 conferences a year here in Florida. And I know one of the passions of our current president of FPA and our CEO is substance use and getting the word out, and how do we support pharmacists in well-being and all of those sorts of topics that are related to this. So we will definitely have more to come.
Yeah, so even if it's not a conference or a summit specifically on substance use disorder, you feel like a lot of these general conferences are going to have a component that focuses on substance use disorder.
Yes, even our clinical conference in February had 3 hours on marijuana. So, we are seeing little bits of it in each of our conferences.
Yeah, that's important for a lot of reasons. And like one reason I feel it's really good that this is happening, because it's normalizing it. It's not like this weird thing that's bad and nobody wants to talk about. It's being normalized, just like, they have a seminar on hypertension or diabetes, substance use disorder. It's just all one and the same. Like we were saying before, it's just a medical condition that's being treated.
Correct.
Okay. Joy, well, fantastic. I'm so glad you're able to join us and give our viewers some, insights into the summit and just what's happening in general in this area. Do you have any final comments before we say goodbye to everybody?
No, I think this is great. And if there's anything that I can do from Florida, let me know. As I'm involved with the FPA and my local association, and so I'm happy to support pharmacists however I can.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for what you're doing, and thank you for joining us today. And
you're welcome.
Talking again soon, I'm sure.
Okay.
Right.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.